We are continuing our study in the Gospel of Matthew. We have been looking at the temptations of Jesus, and in this reading, we're going to be looking at the third temptation. I will be reading from Matthew chapter 4, verses 8 to 10. I am going to be reading from the Phillips translation. Once again, the devil took him to a very high mountain, and from there showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their magnificence. Everything there I will give you, he said to him, if you will fall down and worship me. Away with you, Satan, replied Jesus. The scripture says, thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve. What is the common problem for the church in every era and every place? It is not that the church goes completely immoral or that the church believes all sorts of weird and wonderful things. For a moment, take a wide-angle view of Jesus' ministry and his interaction with the religious leaders of his day. You do not hear Jesus accusing them of adultery or murder. On the other hand, as a rule, you do not see Jesus getting into discussions with them about doctrine. Now, there is one major exception. You can turn to Luke chapter 18 and verses 27 to 38, and in particular verse 27, and see an exception to that rule. You see, Jesus' problem with the religious establishment was not doctrinal or moral. In a sense, they were all on the same page when it came to these issues. The issue for Jesus was their disconnect between what they claimed to believe and how they lived it out. In other words, their claim to belief was not representative in their life. The church in every day and age struggles over this same issue. Now, take what we have just said and see the third temptation in light of this. Did Satan want Jesus to believe that God had four sons, or for Jesus to believe in reincarnation? On the other hand, did Satan want Jesus to engage in some immoral behavior? You see, the third temptation was not about doctrine or morality. It was about how to live out and achieve what Jesus came to do. All Jesus had to do was, in essence, sit back and acknowledge who was Lord of the earth. That was Satan. And Satan, well, he was quite willing to share his authority and power with Jesus. Just let him acknowledge who was ruler of this world. What was Jesus asked to give up? He was asked to give up a life of suffering that would be topped off with death on a cross. Most of us are of the temperament, and I put myself in it, where if we have a choice between a life of ease and a life of suffering, we will take a life of ease. Jesus was offered the kingdoms of this world without a cross. Jesus on the surface could have achieved what he came to do without the cost. The problem was that there could be no atonement for sin without the cross. On one level, the temptation seems real, and on another level, it was ephemeral. What Jesus was offered was actually nothing. You see, Jesus knew that the way of suffering and the way of the cross was the only way. Look at our world today. Look at the church within our world. We are often offered consumer Christianity. We can have Christianity without embracing suffering and a life of self-denial. We understand that suffering and self-denial does not sell. Why bring it up? Sweep it under the rug, push it aside. What has seeped into much of Christian teaching is rather the idea of success. I have worked for a time as a pastor, and often the examples that are often up to pastors to follow are churches that have the outward markings of success. They have the money, they have the people, they have the shiny new building. But the life of faith, the life of a follower of Jesus Christ, is not a call to a life of money, a life of comfortable middle class existence, a life without suffering, a life of ease. Suffering in this world is pushed aside and discounted. Now ask yourself, if Jesus felt that the way of the cross was the way to gain the kingdoms of this world, how can we as a Christian feel we are exempt from taking the way of the cross?